The best lurkers in Valorant can do it all. Take space, look for intel, call rotates, and take flank timings when they present themselves. You could do all these things and more. Lurking is when a player on offense plays on the opposite or middle of the map to control space for their team, generally the sentinel and sometimes the controller. This can be to look for a late round flank, tell your team that the enemy is rotating off a site, or to make sure your team can't get flanked throughout the round. A good lurker knows what space they can take, what areas of the map they should contest, and the speed at which they should take action. A bad lurker gets first blooded, never takes any space to call rotates, doesn't take correct timings, and is useless for their team. Lurkers are important because they don't allow the defense to trap the offense. Most of the time in ranked, offenses do simple strategies like 4 or 5-man site hits, and often a defense has utility that can slow this down. That is where a good lurker comes in and allows your team to either slow down the pace or rotate to the other side of the map. While every team should have somebody lurk to hold map control, it is important that they don't do the same thing every round. This lets the defense single them out or play the gaps that the lurker leaves. Good lurkers change up their pacing, play with the team from time to time, and most importantly, put fear in the defense.
Nice round.
A confident lurker takes space while staying safe. This can be slow mid-play, jiggling corners, or walking up on a bomb site solo. A scared lurker never takes space and isn't as impactful for their team. This is because if they never take space, then they will be late on flank timings or won't be able to know when they could take a site for their team. Step 1. Limit test and learn what areas you can normally walk up on, and what angles you need to clear most often. Nobody will be a great lurker until they test what they are allowed to do game after game. Step 2. Get into aggressive positions where you can take timings into sites or into the enemy's backline. If the lurker is not in an aggressive position when the time is right, it could take 10 plus seconds to pull off the lurk, and every second matters in Valorant. Knowing when to take a timing can be very difficult. You don't want to be too slow or too fast. Both could make you useless for your team. An easy way to figure out timings is based off enemy footsteps. People who rotate from site to site often run, making loud steps that you can play off. Another way is by simply looking at the minimap or listening to your team's comms about who is already on the rotated site. You can then decide how many players have rotated and who could still be waiting. Look to either wait for the rotates to get free frags, wait for them to pass and flank for a free round, or go aggressive and take them by surprise while they are rotating. Each has its perks and can allow you to affect the game differently. Next, you have done everything right. Got aggressive and know that the enemy team is rotating, or walked up on a site and found nobody holding the valuable positioning. Now is time to decide whether it is a good idea to call your team over for a site rotate. The two main keys to look out for is, does your team have site control already? If yes, you don't want to flood the comms with mentions to rotate. This could confuse your team and make them decide to play separated. If the answer is no, you can try to call your team over for a rotate. This should be a no-brainer. Your team doesn't have the other site anyways. Now for the harder part. You likely don't have control of where your team needs to go. So you can either tell them to be careful when going through certain parts of the map, or tell them to go the long way, which will likely be a safer route. This is important because you don't want your team to get caught by an enemy player who walked up where you didn't. There is definitely more to lurking than this, but I don't want to get too confusing. These are the basics. Try not to be the first person to die on your team. Try to make as much space as possible, opposite or in the middle of the map. Listen for sound cues or comms from your team about where players are on the map. And finally, pay attention to where your teammates are if you want to call a rotate. If you do all these things, I guarantee your lurking abilities will improve, making your teammates glad when all they have to do is rotate toward an open site, or notice a free flank by their teammates. Lurking can be hard, but with time and intelligence, anyone can be a great lurker.